Welcome to Corpstruction, the podcast of the Tulsa District Corps of Engineers. We are coming to you from Midtown Tulsa, Oklahoma, from the site of Cityplex Towers. Today, I'm actually joined by Joey Cabay. Joey is the metalworker leaderman for the Ensley Engineer Yard in the Memphis District. And you might be wondering, well, what does Joey have to do with the Tulsa District, which is way over in Oklahoma? Joey, tell us about what your guys do out in Ensley at the shipyard.
Sure thing, Brandon. So basically, we're a facility that has 3 dry docks, and all of the Corps vessels, mostly from Memphis south to New Orleans, we specialize in repairing them. These vessels beat themselves up all year long doing the work on the river, from dredging to grading the banks, and there's all kinds of different operations that go on. And after those boats are beat up for a year, they bring them into us. We put them up on the dry docks. We fix holes, dents, and then new fabrication, new equipment that might be needed. And we stay booked up year after year, just trying to catch up with taking care of the needs of those vessels.
And now dredging, you were saying it beats up a ship. Or a barge, as we say it. Can you talk about a little bit about how often you see the same barges or ships that come through, just in terms of the type of damage that gets done to them?
So the dredge Hurley is based out of Memphis, Tennessee, and it's a 348-foot long dredge. So it's a huge ship with a large crew. And this thing has what we call a dust pan. So it kind of looks like the little handheld dust buster vacuum cleaners that gets lowered down right in the front of the boat. And that thing just eats up dirt on the bottom. Well, that process it's not cookie cutter. There's huge rocks, trees. And with this vessel moving across the river, running into this type of stuff, it just destroys the front end of that boat. They've hit dikes, you name it, nudging up against other barges as they make tow. You're just beating metal into each other, and it creates a lot of damage over the year.
How thick is the metal that comprises the barge, or at least the part that would get hit?
In a typical crew, we've got a lot of units out on the river, and we've worked for you. We've got vessels that come from Tulsa as well. I'm just focusing in on our main areas, Memphis to New Orleans, and everything working on those rivers. Not just the Mississippi tributaries. We're fixing those vessels as well. But the metal, wherever you're at in the country, as long as it's inland, you're going to see a lot of 3/8 material. You're going to see 1/2 inch. You're going to see inch, 3/4. Depending on what part of the boat. If it's in the front and it's running aground, a lot of these barges are pushed up against dirt embankments. You're going to see an inch cladding kind of in the front as an armoring. But the body of the vessel, the most common, if you had to bet your paycheck on what you're going to see the most, it's 3/8.
3/8 of an inch?
Yes, sir.
Oh, wow. That's pretty.
About like that.
Oh, wow. So how long does it take how long does it take to cut through that, because you have to cut out a section, right, and then replace it, or how does that work?
So what we do is, we're talking dry dock work here now. So if you come in, I've replaced bathroom doors before. So if you come in for maintenance and you don't need us to access your hull or your propellers or your rotors, you can just pull up. We've got a mile-long dock system we call the string out. It's a metal dock. It floats up and down as the river level moves with 3 dry docks attached to it. If you need your bathroom door replaced, you can pull right up there and we can do that work without putting you on a dry dock. More extensive repairs, if it doesn't have to do with the hull, we can do there too. We're doing a room addition to the Hurley. They could park right there and we can add rooms just like a typical construction site. But say you've got an area that needs to be cropped out, as we call it, on one of the dredges, and we're going to get you up on dry dock. We're going to do a sounding. So we're going to go through with an ultrasonic device and we're going to find out. The engineers will prescribe a grid. They may say, hey, 4x4 all over the boat. We're going to get that sounding back, determine what's rotted. Every vessel in our fleet, your fleet, they've all got rot somewhere. The river's hard on these boats. And so we're going to find out. Right now, we've got one on dry dock. It's a 40-foot by 40-foot section. So we're going to go in. We're going to cut all the plate loose. We're going to brace it up. We spend a week and a half just bracing things so that this thing doesn't start to move in a way we don't want to or it isn't prescribed. We're going to get the plate out of there. We're going to get the structure, and then we're going to start to replace it section at a time. If you want, you could. We never do a repair smaller than 2 foot by 2 foot. It's kind of one of the rules we go by. But let's say you had a 4 foot by 4 foot section and some structure inside there that was bad. It wouldn't be unthinkable to have that done in a day and a half.
Really?
If everything was ideal. Typically what happens is we get in there to do a small section like that, and as we start to cut, the damage area grows. We start to see more rot, more places in need of repair, and it just gets larger and larger until we've gotten all the rot out, or the diseased portion of the boat out.
Now, you talked about, it sounded like you were talking about non-destructive inspections earlier with the sound, they put the gel on the,
yes,
and then they use the ultrasound type deal to basically send the waves through the metal to tell you here's where the weak points are.
That's what we do, and we're just looking. So there's several different devices like that. We're just looking for a thickness report on that phase. So we're not using that for weld testing. We have that capability. We have 2 CWIs in house. We're going to do a lot of dye penetrant testing because we're doing thousands and thousands of feet. I mean, we had a dredge from North Carolina. We rebuilt the whole vessel practically. That's still ongoing. And the boat we've got out here now, or it's a mooring barge for Vicksburg. I'm not sure how long it is exactly, but I know it's as long as the Hurley. So you're talking 300 plus feet, cutting out 40 foot right in the center of the boat by 40. We're cutting the front end of the boat off. When we're done with that, you've got a half a mile of welds. So the easiest and most productive way to test that is to spray dye penetrant on it. CWIs will go, it highlights bad areas, and then anything that they circle, they want repaired. They'll go back through a second time and make sure that they're pleased and everything meets code.
They run like a black light over it or whatever to see the dye penetrant, or
that is one that's a very specific. Typically, what we're using is it's one that bleeds red. So you put on the developer and it's white, and those bad areas will just show up just dark red stains.
Oh, okay. So like people who now to the people that do that, they're also doing the welding and the metals work, or is that
Absolutely.
a whole separate section? Okay, wow. So
we're growing. So we started out this road. I give my chief a lot of credit. He's been here approximately 15 years, and he came in and started implementing standards and procedures that were more common in more elite industry metalworking. And so we have had a CWI on for the last 3 years, but that CWI is a working CWI, just like I'm a working foreman. So we're out there doing
CWI, Joe?
Certified Welding Inspector.
Okay.
So in the metalworking field, it's a big deal. A lot of education. The testing is extremely hard, and they're the person on site that can tell you your welds aren't cutting it. In the private sector, that's the quickest way to get shown to the gate. You get 3 welds on a lot of these jobs that the CWI doesn't like. They weren't repaired properly, and you'll be looking for a new job. So they've got a lot of power, a lot of education, a lot of responsibility. Because when he signs off on that repair, he's saying that it's going to go down the river and it's going to do its job. And those guys that aren't metal workers no longer have to worry about that area.
So
but we have to. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. What were you saying?
I was just saying we have 2. It's a department that's growing. Next fiscal year, we're looking for a 3rd. And eventually, I see down the future, it may be years from now, to where they won't touch metal. They will just be doing inspections.
All right. So all those people who work in aircraft and non-destructive inspections in that world might have some experience in that you guys will be looking for essentially in that.
Absolutely. So I'm positive that we'll have another one running, at the end of and then you're starting to have a department now. It's not just one guy. The problem with us right now, just keeping them doing the inspections, is we need all hands on deck. We're several years behind. More and more vessels need us. They want to come here because of the work we do. And it's just, if you've got, typically your certified weld inspectors in this industry are phenomenal metal workers. So we're putting you to work. If you've got a guy with 20-something years as a metal worker in the field, and we've got a vessel like this one I'm talking about now that want it done before Christmas, we're working 7 days a week on it, 12-hour days. I mean, we're putting you in the game.
Oh, that's a lot of overtime you guys are putting out there to stay afloat.
Yes, sir. It's part of this industry. I think I'm safe to say that the guys in this industry look for that overtime. There's levels to it. So I had over 1,000 hours of overtime September this year.
Oh, wow.
Yes, sir. And that's not the most in my unit. There are guys that had quite a bit more than that.
How does somebody get into what you guys do and into the metals world?
We are hiring around the clock. There's always an opening here. Virtually always an opening here. If there's not one run this week, give it a month and one will be out. I was a teacher at Arkansas State University in the welding program,
right.
And I'm starting to see get on and then learn, get enough to get in the door. So we have a program called a 5-8-10. You can come in as a welder's apprentice. Young men are getting those jobs, and potentially women, with minimal. I've taken shop class in high school. I was taught to weld in high school. I practiced just a small amount of time, but they show a work ethic. They say the right things on their resume in their interview. We get them in here as basically a laborer, and those have really been working out. If they've got the right work ethic and they're working hard, on rainy days, it's raining here now, and I had one back in the shop. We start teaching them stuff. They start practicing, and you have 1 year to make your first weld test. Once you pass that test, now you're an 8 in the WG side. Then you have another year to pass the next series of tests. And before you know it, we're moving you into a journeyman welder program. I really believe in those types of apprenticeship programs, starting in, even if it's someone that's interested in electrical, go to the big electrical shops in your area and say, hey, I want to do this. Can I start out sweeping the floors?
Right.
And if they see a work ethic, we're looking for hungry workers. If we see you doing the small things right, I'm going to grab you and say, hey, come over here. Let me show you what I'm doing.
Are you going to teach them how to make that dime edge or whatever it is on the weld? Is that
I'm still teaching myself?
Oh, really?
No, I'm good enough. I tell everybody that I'm never going to lose the contest, but I'm probably never going to win one either. I'm a solid B+, A-.
What type of welding do you all do? Is it arc, or what are some of the types of welding you all do?
So with what we're doing, we have a pipe shop that's excellent. All these boats have water pipe. There's air. There's pipe running through all of these boats, and other equipment. We don't just work on the vessels. We work on the equipment that goes with the vessels. So the dozers, the excavators, they all have real specialized equipment that we work on, and that requires all the welding. You name it, we're out here doing it. So if you're doing a pipe job and that pipe is nice, just beautiful stainless steel, you're going to be TIG welding that stainless steel.
And what is TIG welding?
So TIG welding is tungsten inert gas, and it means you've got one hand with a tungsten, literally the metal weldment is in this hand, and it's supplied with electricity, and you're going to have a filler metal in the other hand, and you're working them both. And that's where you get on Instagram and you see these beautiful welds and these beautiful patterns. These guys are TIG welding. So we do a lot of TIG welding. Totally different group of certifications. Most of my guys have multiple certifications, because I might be TIG welding one day, I might be pipe welding the next. So when you leave here, if you decide to move on, one of my guys is going to have sheets of certifications that he's went out and got. The welding procedure for shipyards and heavy metal, so your railroads, your big steel structures, is called flux core. Flux core is an operation that we use a gun. So you hear of MIG welding. MIG welding is typically run at a lower heat, less volts. Your flux core is hotter, it's more penetrant, and it's typically more forgiving. And we run miles of that stuff in shipyards. And a lot of, if somebody's listening, they've had somebody, that they know that's in the railroads, it's kind of the same. But that's what you're going to see, and that's what you want to be good at if you want to excel in a place like this.
Tell me about the teams that you guys have, because when I was growing up, in Middle Georgia. I had this friend whose stepfather was he was a welder for I won't say the name of the company, but they make school buses. And he was one of the hardest working people I know. And even, I mean, it was amazing. And he would get out and I know it gets hot, especially in the Southeast. But I know that just being around him, he was the type of person that just one of the hardest working people I'd ever met in my life. I don't know if I've met maybe one or two other people in my life who I've ever seen work as hard as him. But tell me about the type of people you have in your crew there and the culture there.
So we need a lot of guys to keep this ship running. Right now we're somewhere I think just under 35. We might be 33, we might be 34. We're young right now. There's things that are happening in the trades. A lot of that old knowledge is retiring off. I'm fairly young as far as where I'm at. I've worked for the Corps for 5 years, and I'm one of our leadermen. We lack a lot of gray hair, but what that means is you can be young and a go-getter, be on job 2 or 3 years and pick some of this stuff up and be leading a crew. The way we set ourselves up is we have multiple jobs going on all over the yard. We have jobs outside the yards. A lot of times we're working in Texas, New Orleans on projects. So you would be set up job specific. If, Brandon, you're a great pipe welder, but you don't really have any leadership, you're just a young guy that's good at welding pipe, you're going to be paired with potentially a laborer, maybe another welder that's pretty good, and then you're going to have a crew. You're going to have a crew leader. Our crew leaders we call fitters. And fitters make sure the project fits. So you're responsible for interpreting blueprints and bringing all the fabrication process together. And we might have 8 different crews like that working on 8 completely different jobs out on this yard. And then 2 more in Georgia working on something. And my position is over those teams. I'm the guy on the ground actually checking the work, driving the pace of the work, answering questions, helping. And then I report to my bosses, which would be the chief and the assistant chief. So right now, the vessel from Vicksburg is huge. We've got 40 laborers on it. We've got 12 welders and fitters, and then 2 leadermen are working on that vessel. That's a huge project. 50 some odd people on one vessel working at the same time. But more typically, when we were rebuilding the Wilmington Curry Tuck vessel, it was very typical to be broken down 14 people and break those 14 down into 3 crews, depending on what work was being done that day.
Tell me about that sense of accomplishment that you all get from because you're essentially going in and you get a vessel and you do some repairs on it. I mean, tell me about how does that feel, like that sense of accomplishment from knowing you put your hands on something and work on it?
Well, I came from a background where I did welding, farm type welding. I taught at ASU. I welded for the Memphis Area Transit Authority. And those jobs are extremely monotonous. Teaching welding is rewarding in its own way, but you're welding on the same types of things every day, and it's very short, not very complex projects. So to come out here and to see boats larger than football fields out on your dry dock, I tell everybody when I try to describe it, I say, think of a football stadium that sinks and you pick a ship up on it. And right now, the vessel we have hangs over both sides. So now I went from welding on bus parts and teaching young people to weld on 6-inch plates to now I'm working, sometimes your canvas is 50 yards long. It's insane. And to come in, all these people, they need us desperately. Their boats typically have multiple holes in it, multiple points of failure because of rot or damage. So we're going in and we're literally saving the day.
Oh,
This vessel right now is part of Armor One, and they lay concrete on the Mississippi River. Their season is depending on us getting this boat back together and out on mission. And so all the way up to the general in our division, everybody's counting the days down for us to get this out there. So when we sink that sucker and it goes back on its way, it's a real sense of pride. And then we know that the next one coming needs us just as bad. I tell my guys all the time, this is never going to end. Everybody needs us. Everybody's waiting on us to jump on their next project. And that feeling is, it's something that we'll all get to brag to our grandkids about. You know, when people say that they're needed, I tell my guys, I say, everybody's going to tell your kids and your grandkids how important you are. And here we actually have the opportunity to make it true.
Oh, wow. There's because a lot of these barges, the government doesn't just buy a new one every year. I mean, you buy one, it's an investment, and it's what do you think the oldest one you've ever worked on was?
We've got several. They're stamped 1912.
Oh, wow.
Yes, sir. I don't know. That's the common number I see, the 19 teens. So the dredge, that's the counterpart to the Hurley. So the Hurley's based out of Memphis. We've got another large dredge, not quite as big as the Hurley. That's the Jadwin, and it's based out of Vicksburg. And they are the workhorses of the Mississippi River. The Jadwin was originally built in 1934.
Wow.
Yes, sir. So it comes in, and you see rivets and things that were literally built in the 30s, and we're cropping that out one section at a time and renewing it. They can't spend a lot of time here. We don't have time, and they don't have time. They can't be here for 4 years and us replace the whole vessel. So we determine the worst sections, we fix that part, send them on their way, and do it all again next year.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. I mean, and to get to touch something that is that old, and to be able to repair it and make it better and keep it running for hopefully another, what is that, like 100 plus years? I mean, 1912, that's over 111 years old or whatever, if my math.
I keep the rivets to these old vessels in my desk, so I've got a few. I try to save one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What are some of the other jobs that you all have that in the shipyard that in general? Because you're one section of about how many people approximately?
I own the yard. This is my guess. I've heard the numbers, but it's not. I can't think. It's somewhere around 200.
And is that the shipyard as a whole, or just
that's
the
the shipyard as a whole? So operations is what we fall under, and that's all the vessels out there working on the Mississippi. We're somewhere 400 plus. I know it's 400 plus. I don't know the exact number. And a large subsect is made up of what's at Ensley. I don't know the exact number. The way this works is the metals unit drives a shipyard. People don't come to a shipyard because you need a plumber. If your boat needs a plumber and you're out at work, you call a plumber. But you come here for that periodic maintenance or that emergency repair that's got to take you out of work, and that's going to be metal work on a boat. You come here though, and we're building new bedrooms for the dredge Hurley, so that means one of the other units we have that we work with, we've got the shops unit. Well, the shops unit is made up of carpenters, electricians, plumbers, HVAC. All the other building trades are housed in that unit. And so we've got that. We've got a mechanic shop that works on all. We've got one barge that when it shows up, it's loaded with nothing but the giant D8 bulldozers. And so we've got mechanics here that work on all that stuff, the excavators, all the things that move dirt. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just trying to. So we're basically the mechanics, and then all your building trades are here. And we've got a section of what we call navigation. So there are survey boats, and they look more like, and we work on those as well. They're like large speedboats. And so you've got a guy driving that in a grid in a section of river. You've got a guy with a computer, and they're running radar, and they're just surveying the bottom of the river to see how shallow it is. And that's gonna prescribe next year's or the next decade's work as they find areas that need some love out on the river.
So everybody knows there's a big drought going on, and the Mississippi River has been hit pretty hard by it. We've felt it out here in Tulsa as well. We just got some rain that came through. Did it hit you all?
Yeah, it's been pouring today.
Oh, good. Yeah. Hopefully it keeps up.
Yeah, we need it bad. So if you're getting to how it's affected us, the string out I told you about is sitting on dirt. So it's supposed to be a floating dock system. It's sitting on dirt. The draft in some of our areas was below 7 feet, so that means none of our vessels can crank up and move around during that time. The dry docks work a lot better when you can use a crane barge for support. You've got a crane out there on the river. Crane couldn't get to us, and it is destroying our dock system. So when you put that down on the dirt, it's not meant to do that, and it's just breaking and crushing those barges in. It's done a lot. It's done as much damage. The older senior guys say this is as bad as they've ever seen it, and it's just staying this way. It's come up some, but it'll come up a few feet and then it'll just bottom back out on us.
Oh, really? And that's one of the things, because when you start getting those flows again, you start getting that sand coming down the river and the silt moving down the river, and then it drops as the river starts to drop, right? So it drops all that, and that's why you need all these dredges out there doing that work. And it's kind of unique, I guess. Well, I don't know if I'd say unique. We do some dredging here, particularly after flood events. We've had to do a lot of dredging, but we also do a lot of contracted dredging. But out on the Mississippi portion, it's Corps pushing the dredging.
The Corps are the workhorses, but there's plenty of work to go around. There's a lot of private dredges. Matter of fact, last season we've got the largest dredge inland in the nation, the Hurley, and we had a contract dredge right out here in our backyard doing some work. So I don't know the ins and outs of how that works, but I know that there's contracted vessels all up and down the Mississippi River, and then you got to think the tributary systems as well. It's I was able to go to the Motor Vessel Mississippi, which is housed in Memphis, has public hearings a couple of times a year, the high water and low water inspection. And I visited that and got to see farmers and representatives coming and pleading their case. And the hot item last year, they were talking about the White River in Arkansas. And so that's not the Mississippi River, but there's plenty of businesses that want that navigable again, and they're expecting the Corps to get to work on it. So there's a lot going on. I mean, the Mississippi River is my bread and butter. It's what I know. It's right out my back door. But there's all kinds of other work and other vessels that we do deal with.
You mentioned the White River. That pretty much connects the McClellan-Kerr Arkansas River navigation system from the Arkansas River to the Mississippi River. So we actually there was a guy took a sailboat that he purchased, and refurbished, and he essentially, he had the motor. He didn't use the sails, of course. At least I don't think he did. And he basically took it from Tulsa down to Baton Rouge. So I'm assuming he locked through. Well, he had to have locked through all that. So he had to go up the Mississippi up to Baton Rouge to do all that. And it was kind of interesting to see that you can go all the way from, which is how we send the Mr. Pat, or one of our working vessels, from the Tulsa district all the way up to you guys to do some work. I know we sent it out there a few years ago. I'm assuming we'll probably end up having another work barge or something coming out there eventually in the near future.
I'm sure. And I've been talking to people from the St. Paul district, and we've got the Getz coming. And there's another one. I'm bad with some of these vessels we've never worked on before, but there's one that's named after a general, and it's coming down too. And this will be first of next year. They've got dry dock times on our big dry dock scheduled. And the conversation is, we want you guys to do all our work in the future. And, and so there's a lot that I feel like, and I give credit to my boss, Paul Lacey. He took this area from just government work, kind of, getting enough done and getting it down the river to making us a shop of excellence. And I think that the signals went out. The problem is do we have time to get to you? Do we have the manpower? But other than those two things, I would say that anybody in USACE, that they want their vessels worked on here.
And getting that manpower is important. So can you talk about the need for the qualified app? You kind of touched on it where you said, if somebody's interested in doing that type of work and really contributing to the infrastructure of the nation, especially through metals work, or metal work, they can start out like that. But can you talk about that need and
I mean, not only our industry, my wife manages a company that has all the trades, and they're in the same boat. You not only need bodies, but you need young people that show up on time, that work hard independently. And so we get people that apply for the jobs, but a lot of times I'm seeing, and this is just a shout to everybody listening or has young people that are interested in these jobs, I see resumes and it just says worked at Walmart.
Right.
And there's a lot of that. I do a lot of outreach, talking to other colleges, and this is something I'm hearing from a lot of industry. Break that down. If you've never done metal work, but you've had it in school, I want to hear, I showed up to class every day on time. These are the tools I know how to work. Hey, with my dad in his garage, I've used these tools. You can expand on those areas that you do know. And so there's a drought of people really taking the time to prepare for that resume. And the ones that do just shine through. But we need skilled workers. The young people are winning the day because I think there was a deficit, and now that wave has started to show, and people realize, hey, HVAC's where it's at. I don't want to go to a 4-year college. Metalworking is where it's at. So we're getting a wave of young people, but that also means that if you're the middle of your career and you're a metal worker and you're a journeyman and you've got real skill, like, we want you. That makes you that much more valuable, because if I know I can go out there and hire 10 young people straight out of trade school, I've got to have somebody to lead them. I need that mid-career person that can take 4 or 5 fairly green workers, but we need it all. But I would say that the biggest deficit right now is that middle career person that's journeyman level.
What would you say to somebody who's interested? Why should they come to Ensley or to the Corps to do this type of work versus anywhere else?
I'm probably a bad one. I'm overly optimistic. If people tell me, but I love our work. I love what we do. You are guaranteed a job. COVID, everybody, all the things that happened with COVID, all the desperation. I was getting 40 hours overtime a week. If I wanted it, it was here. And that is year round. We're so busy. There are so many projects for the Corps of Engineers. It's going to be a stable job. You're going to be cross-trained. I'm crane certified. I'm a rigger. There's so many different things I could tell you that I do that have nothing to do with metal work.
But are you forklift certified?
Oh, absolutely forklift certified. I'll drive them as big as you want them. But all of that, that's right out of high school. These guys were getting them through that, and then they're jumping on large pieces of equipment. And all of those things are things you're going to put in your back pocket at a very young age. There's no age limit for us. I mean, I've got guys driving huge off-road articulating forklifts. They're 19. And so once you get all of that, you're gonna have multiple certifications by the time you leave. Even if you're not a welder, if you're an electrician here, you're going to start to gain all of those things that the industry is looking for. You're going to get an OSHA 30 or an OSHA 10, depending on what your boss deems. It's constant. I've been to 4 training classes this year, brushing up on AutoCAD. If that's something you're interested in, we'll train you to do AutoCAD. We've had a large, this is a big plug, I think, a lot of fun toys we get to play with. We've had a huge plasma table that I've been one of the few people that runs here in the metals unit. It'll cut a 20 by 8 foot sheet of metal. It can cut up to 3 inches thick. Well, we just threw it out the door. We're done with it. And now we've got an even larger water jet from Flow Systems. And this thing's massive. I've actually been traveling and busy. I haven't been trained on it yet. But, I mean, the thing is insane. It looks like something out of the future. It's got an articulating arm. It won't just cut in the flat position. It can cut plate, cut pipe, bevel it. So we're kind of stepping into the future.
And now you said earlier, you're guaranteed a job. You don't mean you're guaranteed to get hired. You mean if you get hired, you're guaranteed to get work.
Yes. And you're building that education that's hands-on. The hiring process is a tough process. You've got to go through USA Jobs. It's something I think multiple agencies are dealing with to make it more user-friendly, but it's definitely worth the headache. Get in there and do the best you can with it. Put a good resume in the system. But no, you're not guaranteed a job. Hopefully, if we're doing everything right, it'll be very competitive. But once you get on here, you're gonna get the kind of training and the kind of people around you with the kind of expertise that'll go a long way.
And I mean, the type of skills that you learn, even if say you did it for 10 years, right, 15 years, you end up with this enough skills where if you wanted to end up starting your own business somewhere doing metal work, whether it's, I don't know, making rims or like the Orange County chopper type thing,
Sure.
You've got those skills to learn to do some things with metal that are quite artistic,
Oh, sure. We've got a lot of our guys, if they want to, most of us. The only time I had a guy call me last week wanting me to do a welding job, and I said the only time I look at my welder is to check my shop and make sure nobody's stolen it. So I get plenty. But there are guys that do side jobs. We've got a guy that repairs for one of the ATV dealerships if they have something that they need fixed. So the work is as wide from duck blinds around here, you name it. People are hot for good welders, but also the industry and the world is starting to change where they see us as important pieces of leadership. It's really hard to function and run a shipyard without having some input from the people that are the metal workers. So you could go into scheduling, this is project management, all the projects running. So it starts to turn into, we just had a machinist that went from a machinist to now he's on the GS side as an engineering tech. So you don't have to just stay in the trades. You could very easily come to metals unit and work for several years and end up one day being a project manager on the GS side.
Joey, what have I not asked you that I should have asked you?
There's nothing, I'm not having any large, big thoughts here at the end. I would say that I've talked heavily about the metalworking welder side. We have a whole nother side of our shop that's machinists. They've got capabilities, so they're making our rudders, our shafts, they're laser aligning engines. There's a lot of large moving parts that it would take an hour to explain, but there's large hinge sections of these vessels, and they have to be perfect. And when you're talking about something that large, you don't want it eating itself because it's not aligned properly. So they're going in and they're doing very detailed operations on these vessels. And they also tend to not get as dirty as we. So that's also a pretty good industry to get into, is the machining side of things. We have 4 Haas CNC machines now, hundreds of thousands of dollars a piece, and we're gaining more. So we're a shop that has lathes and mills that were made in the 50s, and then we have state-of-the-art Haas CNC type lathes and mills and presses as well.
Oh, wow. Well, Joey, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I know we've been working to get this thing together for a while
Sure.
now, and we've had some technological issues on my end, at least. Thank you so much for your time today, this evening, and I hope you all get the rain you need. I hope we all get the rain we need as well. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, and hopefully when the Mr. Pat goes out there again, I'll get to come out and visit you face to face or something. Maybe
they usually visit every couple of years. I think we'll get her back in here pretty soon.
Hopefully. Well, I don't know if I want to say hopefully or not. I don't know. Well, thank you for joining us for Corpstruction. Corpstruction is a production of the Tulsa District, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Public Affairs Office. This episode of Corpstruction was brought to you by the Ensley Engineer Shipyard of the Memphis District. Thank you for joining us, and have a great day.